Good morning, guys. I took a short social media break, but I'm back and I'm ready for our next topic, which is private renting. So in the first and second year of uni, I was in student accommodation and it had its pros and cons. It was great, but when I got the chance to leave during the pandemic, leave my lease, I felt like it was a new opportunity for me to go into private renting. One, because as a lettings coordinator part-time, I knew the ins and outs of what it would be, and I knew what I could afford and what I couldn't afford. And secondly, because there was a few cons to living in student accommodation. It wasn't via my uni, it was external, and I realised that I was just paying way too much. Even though it works out cheaper if I was private renting myself, it doesn't when I'm with someone or with a group or with a friend. So at the time I was paying £800 per calendar month. London rent prices, crazy. And that was inclusive of bills, which means all the bills were included, so water, heating, gas, electric, etc. But then on top of that I was paying travel costs, which was £140 a month, food, and etc, etc. So I thought it would be cheaper to move out, end my lease early. I was planning to move out anyway once my lease ended, but because I got the chance to end my lease early, I did. And then I started private renting with my boyfriend, which was great because it took the £800 that I was paying inclusive of utility bills and not travel and food, etc, down to £800 per calendar month, around £800 per calendar month, including those external bills to utilities, which was way more affordable for me and much better situation for myself. But what I realised as a lettings coordinator and renting, there's a lot of things that us as students, we don't know, and we get shocked by as soon as we go into the private renting environment. So I'm just going to go through a few things first with you. So the first thing was the money. Let's talk finance. When you go to private rent, you're expected to pay the first month's rent in advance and 5 weeks deposit. This was a shock to me when I became a lettings coordinator, but now I think about it, it isn't. Because it helps landlords protect their property. You gotta remember that you're not buying a property, you're renting it. So this is someone's home, if you think about it like that. And that deposit is refundable. You get it back at the end of your lease if you decide to leave. But there are terms and conditions to getting that deposit back. One of the main ones is you have to return the property as it was given to you. So this is a big thing for a lot of students, which they're shocked by, especially when they're moving out, that I've seen as a lettings coordinator. In the contract, I beg you guys to read it. I beg you guys to read it 3 times, at least 3 times, because you'll get stuck and tricked by, it's not even tricked, but you'll get stuck by these things that you really didn't see coming or realize. One of the main things that people are shocked by that are in contracts is there's no blue tack allowed in properties, which again, it might not be in your contract, but it's in lots of landlord contracts that I've seen with my family. When they've asked me to look at their contracts, I've seen it in their contracts too. And I'm not just saying look for the blue tack clause, read it all, but this is one that comes up a lot. You're not supposed to have blue tack on the walls, which means unfortunately you can't put posters up with blue tack. A lot of people, like the last tenant that lived in my property, they brought the Wilkinson stick-on tabs that you kind of just pull and it comes off the wall, but it didn't. They're still on the wall today. So blue tack, a big thing, because it can ruin the wall, it can affect the wall, and that's something that landlords are really aware of. Also, I want to talk about deep cleaning. If an inventory is done and you get an inventory report and a deep clean has been done and you get that invoice, or you get told the deep clean has been done, you have to do a deep clean, a professional deep clean, when you leave the property. This is another thing a lot of students are shocked by, because they'll clean the property, which probably isn't a terrible standard of clean. I know when I clean quite thoroughly, but it is not the way a deep cleaner or a cleaner who does deep cleaning will do it. They will find every nook, every crack, and clean it non-stop. And that's important again because it can have big deductions in your deposit, which you would probably be using to get a new flat. So you want to ensure that you can get every inch of that deposit back as you can. So that's my first thing, the finance. It's 5 weeks deposit, 1 month's rent, and you want to read the contract to ensure you know the way you can get your full deposit back at the end. Just another thing I'll touch on about deposits before I go into my next point is that you want to make sure your deposit is protected. You should receive a certificate that your deposit is protected by either, I think the two big companies are My Deposit and TDS certificate, or TDS deposit scheme. If it's not protected, you want to get it protected. You want to urge the agency or landlord to get it protected because anything can happen. There can be a dispute on your deposit that you want to make, and you need to go through those two entities to get what you need to go through court proceedings, etc. So you want to make sure it's protected. So I'm going to talk about guarantors for students. Many agencies that I know, that I've spoken with, they accept UK guarantors, but they don't accept international guarantors, or they have a special clause for international guarantors. And I'll explain what this means. A UK guarantor is someone who can pay your rent, well, someone in the UK who can pay your rent in the case that you can't. This can be your parent, it can be a friend, it doesn't even have to be a relative, but it just needs to be someone who can assure that if you can't afford your rent, they can. And I had a guarantor because obviously I'm a student, and it was the case of they wanted my guarantor to earn 4 times, I believe, earnings of my rent, which is crazy, but it's just to protect the landlord and protect the agency. So the problem with international guarantors is that agencies and landlords have a bit less trust in them. Not for any particular reason, it's just because they're outside the UK, they might have different laws and different legislations, which means the rent collection needed for their mortgages, needed for their company, it's hard to retrieve. So with international guarantors, a lot of landlords, they ask for the first month's rent advance as well as the last month's rent in advance, which they are in their right to do so, but it can be hard, especially for students who are coming from abroad to study, where their parents live abroad but they're just coming here to study for a few years. But what we usually do at my agency, we kind of go case by case and then go from there, just because everyone has a different story and we want to make sure that we can help as much as we can, as well as being responsible and sensible for our landlords and for ourselves. So that's the next thing. UK vs international guarantors. Make sure that if you can, you get a UK guarantor, because it will just make the process application much easier. But if you do have an international guarantor, just know that there can be extra clauses, extra finance needed to be paid, and etc. I mentioned at the start of the video about inclusive bills and exclusive bills. So I'll touch on that now and then we'll stop, because I don't want this to be an extra long video. So inclusive bills means that your utility bills are paid for. Now, your utility bills does not include your Wi-Fi. A lot of people have said that it does, and I mean, some landlords do put it in, but in a lot of cases for private renting, Wi-Fi is not included. What is usually included and what utility bills mean is water, gas, electric, and then it may involve council tax as well. But one thing to know as a student is that you do not have to pay council tax. If you're in full-time education, not part-time I don't believe, but if you're in full-time education, you do not have to pay council tax. But you do still have to register with council tax and then give them a letter so they can exempt you. You need to give them your student enrollment letter so that they can exempt you. This is really important because you may get a council tax bill. They usually send them out 3 months after your move-in, and you'll see a big number or a small number depending on your location, and be like, oh my god, I've got to pay this. You don't. As a full-time student, you don't, but you do have to send them the proof that you're a student so you can be exempt. So that's inclusive bills. Non-inclusive bills means that it doesn't include your utility bills. My property where I am now, it's not included bills, and this is something you really need to be cautious of. Depending on the site, I was on Zoopla, it gives you an estimation at the bottom of what your bills are like, not including food, of course. And I went in with the notion of, I paid £40 a month to feed myself during student accommodation, so I thought, to feed me and my boyfriend, £80 for sure a month. That's not the case. We pay £40 probably a week now for food, just because there's 2 of us, and we have lunch. We cook our lunches. We cook everything really. Our work lunches, my uni lunches, and my work lunches, and his work lunches. And you kind of just go through it. And another reason why our bill is so high is because we have a freezer door. We don't have an actual freezer, so we have to do shopping every week rather than stacking everything in the freezer like a student would. That's what I did anyway. So you want to be really cautious of that. You want to make sure that you know whether your bills are inclusive and exclusive. You want to know what bills are included, and you want to make sure you can pay your rent and pay your bills. So looking at the estimations will be key, and kind of just getting a rough idea. You can ask your parents, so how much do you pay electric, water, gas while I was home, and kind of just like divide it between you guys, or see the usage and look at the standing charge, etc. So again, that's really important. Make sure you know if your bills are inclusive or exclusive, and if they're exclusive, look at the estimations and work out if you can get if you can afford it. Because I was looking at properties at the time that was much more than my rent, and then I realized, wait, I haven't even put into account bills. And when I did, I was like, ooh, gotta go down, gotta start making my search button a bit lower, filter it a bit better. But yeah, those are the key things. So I'll do a little recap. Make sure you know the finance. Make sure you read your contract 3 times. Ensure you do a deep clean before you leave the property. Try and get a UK guarantor if you can, but if not, make sure you understand and learn prior to moving in what is needed of an international guarantor. Know you're exempt from council tax, and yeah, and know your inclusive and exclusive bills. So those are, I guess, the only things I wanted to say. I hope it was really helpful, because again, I know a lot of students and myself, I was still shocked by the process. Even though I was a lettings coordinator, it was quite different, because theirs was more automated than my company's is. So yeah, I hope you guys really enjoyed. The last thing I'll leave you on is know your rights. Ensure that maintenance is getting done when it needs to be done. There's agencies out there that can help you if you're having a dispute with your landlord, and feel free to contact me if you're having any problems, private renting, problems with your landlords, and you want to know more about your rights as a tenant, the landlord's rights, and etc. Well, I will see you guys next week for our last topic of the series. I feel like it's gone so fast, but it is what it is. And I've got so much more upcoming that I really want to share with you. So thank you so much, and I'll see you next week.